in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Review with Ike and Joan. Yes, it's been a while. We've been getting our act together. I'm over here in Accra, Ghana, as you know. For the next 3 months, I'll be back by the end of January, the beginning of February. But we're gonna be doing this regularly. Again, we're gonna be doing this regularly. So with that out of the way, and with a simple introduction such as my name is Ike, this is my channel, okay? Ike Ogiamin, we talk about being better and doing better. What are we doing today? We're going to be reviewing an aspect of our economic life that has come to be, okay? This aspect has come to be. What is this aspect I'm talking about? The aspect whereby we tie our earnings to time. People say things such as time is money. People talk about the hourly wage. They talk about the 40-hour work week. They even talk about salaries, yearly salary. And within that year, there is a weekly allotted amount of time that you're expected to work, right? They're not just going to give you the yearly salary if you just show up one day and be like, boom, I'm done, right? So we have somehow, shall we say, tied our time and our money. However, there is a problem with doing that, in the sense that in order to escape a certain strata, a certain glass ceiling, if you want to escape a certain glass ceiling economically, you have to separate your time from your money. But anyways, Joan, before we begin to review, if you will, the video by Teal Swan today, right? Are there any thoughts with regards to this general idea of tying your time to money, your thoughts about it, your history with it, and so on and so forth?
Oh, definitely. Hi, everyone. I know it's been a while. Anyway, excited to be back. Yes, with time and money, I've definitely experienced different attitudes towards it, from before my personal development and all that. And I've worked in retail. I've worked like as a freelancer. I've worked in different types of settings, building businesses and stuff. And it's interesting what you realize about how you view time. Like, for example, I was working in this clothing retail when I was starting a business, when I started my entertainment company. And, by that point, I was starting to have a shift in the way I view money and time. And I was still working that retail job. And I remember thinking like, okay, I'm selling this shirt to the general public for $20, right? And then at the time, I was making $14.25 an hour, and I was like, "What the hell?" I'm selling a $20 shirt that anybody will just buy, yet I'm working $14.25 an hour. And it's kind of made me click, like, wow, like, is that really what time and money is? Like, I'm selling jackets for like $200-$300. Here I am, I make $14.25 an hour, and it just kind of made me see like, hey, I could probably make more money. Yeah. Or I know I can make more money within the time I spend here. Like, am I wasting my time here? Or am I, like, is this just the way it is? But like at that point, I made that connection that I think people just get so caught up in like working in an hourly wage where they don't realize like what their potential is, that they could make more than that hourly wage. And how I spend my time doing that. So that was one of the first things that kind of clicked to me when I started business, and then still working at retail at the time. So that was one of those like light bulb moments for me.
One of those aha moments, as they say. Okay. So now this topic is a lot more complicated than just saying, hey, change your thinking, go from X to Y. No. Okay. And before we start playing the video, let me just allude to the reason why it is more complicated. It is because time is very valuable. As a matter of fact, some might argue, or I like to say, that it really is the only resource, or shall we say, it really is the only valuable thing. Because when you run out of time, when you're
Just run
dead,
out of time.
you're out of time. It doesn't matter
Yeah,
what's the
exactly.
this or the that or the relationships or whatever else you want to say is also valuable. When you're out of time, you're out of time. It is the crucible, the shall we say, the container in which everything else happens, right? So therefore, without it, it is no other resource makes sense. So time is valuable, but we're talking about economics. Okay, we're talking about breaking through and being successful, whatever your measure of economic success is. And typically, it's not where you are right now, right? You're trying to break past a certain level. And in order to balance your relationship of time and money. So let's go to Teal Swan and begin, if you will. Fair use, ladies and gentlemen.
Before we dive into this video, I have to warn you that, like so many of my belief-altering videos, this particular video has the potential to seriously trigger you. This is especially going to be the case if you grew up with a blue-collar mentality. What I ask you to do with this trigger is to work with that inherent resistance that you feel coming up, so that on the other end of dealing with that resistance, you can end up with a belief that truly does serve you, and to choose that belief with your conscious free will. If you were to look from an objective perspective at the human race, you would see two concepts that have dramatically slowed the expansion or growth of humanity itself. The first is hourly wage. The second is salary. One could say that time has become the new currency in the human race. The human economy is based on this concept. Rather than completely overhaul our current economic system, I'm more interested in showing you how these concepts have been a detriment to human happiness, human life, human expansion, and progress within the human race. When people began to be paid according to how many hours they spent doing a task, or for a period of time specifically, instead of for the completion of a specific task, the subsequent belief that came with it was that a person's time is what is valuable. Now, the valuing of a person's time is synonymous with the valuing of a person in general. For example, how many times have you heard the following? If he or she doesn't value my time or prove it, and he or she doesn't value me. This is one of the top reasons, if not the top reason, that people quit their jobs. The first problem with this is that time is a perceptual construct that is created so that we can actually track or even perceive growth, expansion.
1 second. Before I give any thoughts, Joan, any, shall we say, initial reactions to what she has said so far? I know that you mentioned the working at retail, right?
Yeah.
And she started out with the blue collar mindset, and that just kind of rang a bell with me, rang true with what you said. But any initial reactions to what she has said so far? Anything come to
Yeah.
mind for you?
She's definitely digging deeper in how we perceive time. Again, like time is not linear, and there's time doesn't exist. It's coming from that. But I think what she's getting at is the whole idea that we're so caught up in like how much we get paid for our time, where we're not really focused more on the result, which is the thing that kind of made me think about like the way I've been doing things with the business. So I mean, we can get into that later on, but I want to just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's interesting how people when you work in retail, you work in fast food, like, you know how they're starting to demand like, oh, I should get paid more for this kind of thing because it's getting more expensive, blah, 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 blah. And when you kind of see it from the employer side of things, the people that are getting paid whatever the employer is paying them, they don't understand the back end of it. And so therefore they just demand, I need to get paid more, this and that, you don't value me, this and that. But again, it's like, what are you doing for that hour? Like, what skill are you really doing in that hour? So like for me, I worked in that clothing retail. I think I worked there for like over a year. And, for me, it's like, I'm just selling clothes, so like, how dare I demand like a higher pay, It's not like, I did it because I wanted to work on my social skills and like work on my sales skills. And that was definitely like helped me open up like how to start conversations with people working in retail. And that's something I've always been grateful for in retail. But at the end of the day, it's like, like, this is what I do. I just sold clothes, and therefore like the employer sees like, this is what your time is worth. But then me, like on the inside, like, I know I'm better than this. I know I have more skill. I have, more that I can do. I'm more responsible than the rest of the people that works at the same wage as me. So it's just one of those things where, I think people are just so caught up with just like, this amount per hour that they're not really thinking of like the bigger picture of like, what are you actually doing? Are you actually giving them value? Are you actually giving your company value?
Yes. Because people want to have this kind of, I'm a human being and my time is valuable. And that's not the point. That's your feelings about it. However, this person has determined that you are going to do X, and X isn't really worth much. Okay. So the first principle here is that time, as we said earlier, is the most valuable thing that we have. Okay. But when it comes to production, it's about doing something and the result of what you spend your time doing. Okay. So I don't care if it takes you a second and then you came up with this $1 billion idea and then you executed it and you got into the market and boom, $1 billion. Then the main value there is the result, the idea, and it was executed and the market gave you $1 billion, not the time. Okay. So I'm going to say a little bit of something here about the minimum wage, because you've alluded to wage. And we get caught up in that, well, people need a certain amount of money for their time. And there's a whole kind of idea of the living wage, as though, well, it is you, let's say you're an employer. You are responsible. Okay, your labor, okay, the fruit of your labor, the business you created, needs to be taxed. It is subservient to the needs of other people. Right? That you are the slave now. You're the slave, and this person must be able to live. Otherwise, you're a problem. So let me say something about the minimum wage. Okay. Regardless of the other aspects that are involved, there's one important thing about the minimum wage. The more you raise the minimum wage, okay, and this is just true along with many other things that are also true. People always like to hold on to one truth, right? But there are many things that could be true about one thing. What is true about the minimum wage is that the more you raise it, the more the employer is going to undercut certain lower skilled people. In other words, if I can pay some teenager $5 an hour to come and learn some things in my business, right? I would. But if you tell me the minimum wage is $20 an hour, I'm not going to hire the teenager. I'm going to hire some immigrant or someone else who has higher skills, because I'm like, I'm not going to bring in a teenager here for $20 an hour so he could just learn stuff and waste my time. No. Okay. So it is absolutely true that the more you raise the minimum wage, you're removing the lower rungs of the ladder into the entry into the employment force. If people can crawl in at $2 an hour because as you know, as a business person, you know that the value that someone is actually bringing you. If they're not bringing you $20 an hour, you're not going to hire them. So, but it's that thing of, well, I'm not worth $20 an hour. Where do I start? It becomes a problem. Hence, there's this whole thing about, people talk about immigrants. This is not an immigration thing. or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But basically now you have adults taking the jobs at McDonald's or wherever it may be, these jobs whereby the skill is low, the value that you're bringing is low, but you can learn.
Mm-hmm.
So I can pay you to just be around and learn. But if you
Mm-hmm.
tell me I got to pay you this much, then I'm going to go to someone who's more skilled, and I've
Right.
just undercut you. So that
Mm-hmm.
entry level has been undercut. I don't know if there's any reaction you have to that before we go on.
No, I totally agree with that, because again, I work in retail, and I was kind of caught up in that mentality too, where it's like, man, like I'm too good for this, and I'm just getting paid, this much for this type of work, which, in hindsight, like I was like, yeah, of course, like this is easy work. Like it's almost mindless for me because I'm skilled. I have sales skills, and, I was really there to, develop that, right? And I worked with other people, like younger, older, whatever, same age, and they were just like, they show up for the same hourly wage, and they just didn't try that hard. They just know it's like, oh well, I get paid just to show up here. And then what happened was that 3 months in, I got promoted, because they saw that I worked hard. So I got promoted and I got paid more. So it was just kind of interesting that, like, people like show up and they just know they get paid and they don't really try. And whereas like they clearly saw that I was trying, so they felt like, okay, I can pay her more. So that makes sense. Like when, what you say, like the higher the minimum wage is, like, of course, like as an employer myself, like I would want to hire people who can show that kind of skill set, like that's worth $20 an hour or whatever, or, and it kind of made me think about like how I would want to hire people in the long run. And I mean, getting that later, but we've been kind of exploring this idea of, instead of paying someone an hourly wage, we pay them, like per project. Because the thing is, when people know they get paid a certain amount per hour, they just waste their time because they know they'll get paid regardless of the result they show. Whereas like you give them like, hey, this project is this much, you can do all you want with your time as long as I get it done by this date, and it's, to me, like, I think that kind of makes sense depending on what it is. And it's kind of interesting how people, think about these kinds of things. Because again, I've been through this hour, like hourly wage thing. And, when I was younger doing other things, I know it's like, I've had that attitude too, where it's like, well, I can just sit around here and I get paid anyway, So that's the kind of attitude that people have in general, where it's like, I get paid this regardless, so I'm just going to waste my time. And like me now as an employer, I see that people treat their hourly wage that way. I don't know if that made any sense. I felt like I went on a rant.
No. It makes perfect sense. Point being, there is the result, of what you're doing, and then there is the paying you for the ticking away of the time. If I'm paying you for the ticking away of the time, you could just sit there and tick, 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 and still think, okay, well, my time, my life is ticking away. I need more. But if I said, here's the result that you need to produce. You need to produce this widget, close on this deal. Moving towards a performance-based model, which is, let's say, 100% commission sales or some portion thereof. Doesn't have to be 100% commission, right? Or, for example, I hire people and I pay them per project. I have an idea of how long it'll take them so that I can give them a deadline, for example.
Right.
But the task, it's an engineering task, it needs to be done. And if it takes Mr. whomever 15 minutes while he's eating his dinner and he turns it out to me, the task is done. Okay. Yeah. And if this has to go through many revisions and so on and so forth, and more time, it's still the same money. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the point that we've been clarifying. Now we're going to continue the video, and she's about to, as you alluded to before, she's about to talk about the time being a construct, and there's no need to focus on the woo aspect of it, but time basically is about change, right? Would you agree? You have to track change. And even the way we track time, okay, and again, because I like to demystify things so that people have a better understanding.
Right.
In other words, we're like, what do you mean time has changed? It's like, if the sun did not go up and come back down, we would not know how to track time. That was a change. If the earth does not go revolving around, in other words, space and change of positions of things is how we track the time. Now, there's regularity with some changes, such as the revolution of the earth revolving around the sun, all that kind of stuff. So we can track the time with that. But basically, time is how we track the change. And in this particular case, it's about productive change. Okay. You're tracking an amount of production within a certain amount of time. But the time is not the value, the production or the change is the value. Right. So,
Right.
anyways, let's continue with her and then we'll get to the next points. Fair use, ladies and gentlemen.
Or progression in the first place. Time is something that begins to unravel at the fifth dimension in this universe only. For this reason, we can say that time is in essence an illusion. So by saying that a person's time is what matters, you're saying an illusion is what matters most. The second problem is that once a person started to see their time as the thing that mattered the most, they started to see what they were doing with that time as less important. The incentive to really produce quality results decreased. Many people began to do just good enough to keep their jobs. Business became a never-ending road of incentives programs and bonuses to try to get people to produce quality. People began to feel entitled to earning based on the time they spent doing a task, and it doesn't take a genius to see that the incentive to take a long time doing something or to do just good enough to get paid was also born of this concept. Something that we have to accept is that not all uses of time are equal. The third problem is, when we started to see time as more important than what people were doing with their energy and talent in that time frame, then what happened is we actually lost touch with the valuing of unique purpose. Obviously, it doesn't take a genius to tell you that there's been a lot of wounding within human consciousness around the concept of hierarchy. The shadows of hierarchy have caused so much pain that a lot of people just did away with it completely, and what they sought was actually complete equality. Everyone's time and energy is just the same and just as valuable as everyone else's. One of the shadows of this ideology is that people are treated as if they are the same when they are not the same. For more information about this, watch my equally triggering videos titled Hierarchy, Should We Accept It? And People Are Not All Equal.
Boom. Okay. So in addition to, shall we say, buttressing or reiterating some of the things that we said, such as people are just going to put in the bare minimum. I like that video with, the person moving the thing around on the screen and then just typing nonsense, right? and wasting time. And okay, as long as I can put in my timesheet, then I should get paid, that kind of an idea. Again, what are we talking about? We're talking about breaking through a glass ceiling. If you want to stay where you're at, fine. Keep on looking at your time as valuable and keep on thinking, okay, I'm going to force people to give me something based on time. There's only so far you can go with that. Okay. And you can get the government even to say, hey, increase my wage here. Get the union to bargain in a particular way. Hey, increase my wage there. But you're still going to be below that glass ceiling. The people who are giving you that money, whom are above, the employer class, the entrepreneur class, what have they done? They have broken out of this whole time thing and they're like, I'm going to go build something. Okay, I'm going to find a competitive advantage in the market and I'm going to build something. And herein we get to the point of people's time not being equal. And you're like, oh, what do you mean? My time, I'm a human being. And it's like, no. We're talking about economics. We're talking about production and what somebody can do with their time. What LeBron James can do in a basketball court versus you, very different. What the top surgeon in UCLA can do in a surgical room versus the average surgeon, miles different. What an Elon Musk can do versus the regular engineer, very different. So this idea of, well, he's a human being, I'm a human being, there is time, let's get equally paid, is ridiculous. So the second point we're making here is there's hierarchy in time. The first point we made was, hey, look, when it comes to production, it's not about the time, it's about what you produce. And then number two, people are not equal in what they can produce. Any thoughts so far, Joan?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was, again, like my aha moments, like as I worked in retail, worked in hourly jobs, like I had my, moments where I just treat it as like, oh, well, I sit around here and I get paid anyway. But then I realized like, yeah, I'm not progressing, and that was on me, that was on me. And like I went through different types of jobs throughout like my 20s and like my, early 30s. And now that I'm, where I am now, like I am like, working on building this business and just realizing like what time really is and versus what results you produce. And it's just really interesting like how, the people that I work with, the people I hire, and observing the people around me and how they treat their time. And they just value their time, the hourly wage so much versus what they actually do. And, like, I don't know, like, for example, there was somebody that offered to write me charts for my band, right? And it's like, oh, I charge this much per hour. And I'm kind of like, I kind of know how this person works. And I know, me knowing, like, I've been through this phase where it's just like, well, then I'll just like rack up the hours and I get paid more, and take my precious time and I'll rack up the hours. Like, I was like, no, I'm not going to hire you like that. So I found someone else, a young kid. We just got out of college, but he knew how to, like, transcribe. And I was like, hey, I'm going to pay you $200 to write charts for, like, I don't know, like 25 songs. And I need you to get it done like in a month. And because for me, it's like, I don't care how you spend your time. I just want it done. And he did it. And for me, like, that works out better. Because, like, for when someone, wants to think on like an hourly wage, I know they're going to waste their time because I've done it. They're going to rack up the hours for me to pay them even more. Whereas for me, like, I don't care how you do this. Like, just get it done. So, like, that's kind of just like the stuff I started to see, and like what people do and how they behave. And another example is, like, I think I mentioned to you, they're starting to do construction on the other side of my apartment. Like, I see it every morning. Like, I see them every day, and I'm watching them. I'm like, man, these guys are slow, but they know they're going to get paid anyway. And, my husband, Marius, he talks about it because, like, he sees, like, different, like, I don't know if it's culturally or whatever, but, like, he's like, if this was in Germany, like, this would have been done in a month. But this has taken, like, I don't know, like 2 months to, like, dig a hole. And
Yes.
We just watched them. I'm like, oh, where did they go? Like, they didn't even do their whole day. Like what got done? Like, it's just fascinating, like, how people just waste their time, because they know they'll get paid.
100%. So let's drop down a couple of shall we say, principles that we are generally speaking familiar with. One is the 80-20 rule, and another is called the Pareto principle, that are, shall we say, apropos or pertinent to the conversation. The 80-20 rule, we know that basically 20% of people, or shall we say 20% of the effort, is generating 80% of the results. So if we have a sales organization and you have 100 people, okay, it tends to be that 20 of those people are producing 80% of the sales. Within that 20 people as well, the 80-20 rule also works. So 5 people are producing 80% of that 80. So basically about 64% of your entire sales in the business is produced by 5 people. So there are 100 people, but over half of your sales are done by 5 people. And then amongst those 5 people, the 80-20 rule still works. One person, okay, which is the 20, represents 20% of 5, is producing 80% of that 64%. You do the math. One person is carrying a very heavy load there. So if we want to look at them, this is not to say that everyone else is not doing something important. And you cannot, shall we say, you can try to game this rule, but you're still going to be left with it. In other words, as we said, the 80-20 rule operates within the 20 people that are producing 80%. It operates within the 5 people that are producing the 64%. No matter what, okay, if you get a random distribution of people, you're always going to get that kind of an action going on. So you can't be like, oh, how can I just get that 1% guy and bring them all in? It's still going to break out in a certain way. That's why sorting people, though, is still very important. You want to remove, as Joan just said, the kind of person that will tell you, here's my hourly wage for producing sheet music. And you're like, I just want charts. You should be telling me what you're going to charge me at least per how many charts, not with your time. What the hell does your time have to do with this?
Right.
So, and the other thing is, you can look at book sales, for example, okay? Stephen King, okay, is selling all the books, okay? You look at any kind of measure of socioeconomic outcome, and also if you take it away from socioeconomic, and we talked about basketball, for example, right?
Mhm.
People are just very, very different. So to talk about time, which is just this container, this thing of tracking change, and then use that as a way of remunerating people is absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. So
Yeah.
some people's time and energy is just very, very different from other people's time and energy.
Oh
But
yeah.
I'm let's go ahead and continue the video unless you had another point to make vis-a-vis what she said so far.
I mean, yeah, I think I definitely understand where she's going at on the woo side and also the economic side. I don't think people realize, like they're just not aware, like what's really going on. People are just so caught up in their time, like how much to get paid in their time. They're not really thinking of the bigger picture.
Indeed. Fair use. Let us continue. Let me make sure that the video is unmuted. Boom.
Man's skill and man's energy was actually just treated like one resource to be plugged into a machine-like system wherever the need was at that given time. This is actually why you had such a hard time with school, because the foundation of the modern school system is this type of mentality. It's why you learn so much stuff in school that you will never use in your adult life. It's because you're treated like an energy resource to be plugged into the system wherever there's a need. What this viewpoint did was become the source for a massive waste of energy and talent. Now, what you would notice if society itself valued results rather than time is it would become very easy to recognize very fast where somebody's actual interests, actual aptitudes, actual talents actually resided. We would see how unique and different people are from day one, and children would be streamlined toward their innate gifts and interests. If you play this out, the machine of society would be a much more efficient and productive entity. Job satisfaction would be much, much higher. You wouldn't have to try to artificially incentivize quality results because the desire to produce them would be intrinsic. Can you imagine being 5 years old when you loved drawing but really struggled with math, being told that you were going to be provided extra art tutors rather than have to come in for extracurricular math tutoring every day? Basically, long story short, many, many people within human society right now are in the wrong place, the wrong position for them, and it's slowing society down. Most of the people who instantaneously get the dysfunction of valuing time own businesses and struggle with employees who are part of unions and who expect good pay for mediocre results. However, let's imagine that you grew up in the kind of blue-collar level of society for your whole life, so you've only ever been paid
Fair use.
an hourly fee, an hourly wage, or even salary. There's a very quick way that you can see the dysfunction in a society that values time over results. Just go hire a lawyer. It has been a common misconception that really successful or wealthy people do one thing, and that's to value their time more than anything else. You're going to hear people who are in the successful fields or trying to build business success say things like, what's the value of your time? Or my other personal favorite, what's your time worth? Successful people do not waste time doing less than productive and less than efficient things. For example, let's say you got a businessman. This businessman is going to hire somebody to clean his house for him. Now, let's say it's not just about wanting to be able to make the money to hire somebody else to clean your house. When this man hires somebody else to clean his house, that frees up 3 or 4 more hours to dedicate completely to the success and growth of his company.
This is something that a lot of people struggle with. Okay. People would rather, okay, let's say, for example, we got to do some gardening work. Okay. We have to replace the mulch in the house. Okay. Some people would rather spend weeks figuring out, hey, I could go borrow the truck from cousin Joe, drive across town to that place where there's free mulch, get a couple of my other friends to come through, spend a couple of weekends spreading the mulch, this, that, and the other. I'll pay them in pizza, blah, blah, blah. And yay, I saved $500 rather than pay the professional. I don't care the level you're at. And that's why I like the fact that Teal Swan said that getting somebody to clean your house. That it was not all about, generally speaking, it's not all about, I need to make enough money so I can get somebody to clean my house. It's because, look, even before I can afford someone to clean my house, or even before I can afford $500 to pay the professional gardener to replace my mulch, I need to be already in the mindset of, look, I'd rather just pay that $500 because I'm trying to do something productive.
Mhm.
If you're not trying to do something productive, this is not for you. Remember, we're talking about people who are trying to break through that glass ceiling. If you want to spend 2 weekends and borrow Uncle Joe's car and go hang out with your stupid friends and figure out how to spread mulch over the next 2 weekends, look, what I'm saying right now is not that crazy. There are people who pride themselves on saving $500 while they spent a whole 2 weeks trying to figure out how to get free mulch and hire and borrow the truck and go get these other people. Now you're not just talking about one person. Now there's 3 people involved.
Yeah.
So you got to triple the man hours, right? Just to save $500. This is what people don't understand. Hire somebody. Hire somebody to do the stuff. Meanwhile, go back in your office and continue to work on that business. Go back in your office, continue to make those phone calls that you got to make in order to close the deals that you got to close. Go back in your office, go back in wherever you got to be in order to get the results that you got to get, rather than spend 2 weeks to save $500. Pay the $500 to the expert to do their work. Anyways, what are your thoughts regarding what she said and what I said, I guess?
Yeah, that I totally see that in people. They don't, they have a hard time spending money to save time. So I think the thing that's like interesting about the way she titles her video, right? Don't value your time. I think it's like valuing your time in money versus your time, right? And like how you spend your time, because really, okay, people are so caught up in like, oh, I should be paid, $20 an hour. But then it's like, that's, you work like an 8-hour day or whatever. And, that's 8 hours of your time only getting paid $20 an hour. But like, as far as like your skill set, like what are you actually good at? What can you actually, be of value to society with, it's like, that's, people are so caught up in this, like, oh, I should get paid this much an hour at this job. Whereas like, you could be making more actually doing what you're, good at. And that's where your time is actually being taken away. I think that's what she's trying to say. It's like, the way society is built, we go to school and we're actually taught to just be employees instead of being like entrepreneurs and this and that. Although there's that hierarchy we can get into about like, well, there has to be the boss, there has to be the people that run around and do what the boss needs them to do. And I think people don't realize that they, value how much they get paid an hour, like what their time is worth, where they're not actually spending their time doing things that they should, like they can, like show their skill set, like build your business or whatever it is, And the thing that's interesting too is like, I've talked to like millionaire types. I've talked to like people that are wealthy, and they always talk about how much they value their time in a way where they want to have more time to do the things that matter to them. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. Like I was talking to, like, what's his name? Anyway, he's a real estate guy. So he was my landlord. He was renting that house. Remember the house I lived at? So he's a millionaire. Yeah. He's a millionaire. I was like, let's go sit down and have lunch with him. And we just went to this hole in the wall, like pizza place. Cause like the fancy place was just like, long line. And he was just like, like, I know this great place. Let's just have pizza here. So me and my husband went and had pizza with him. And we spent a whole hour and just asking him questions like, how did he get to where he is? And for him, he kept saying, time is the most important thing. Time is the most valuable thing. So he will pay anybody to do all the little mundane things that he doesn't want to do so that he can continue to build his business. And again, it's like, that idea, you got to spend money to make money. And people still have a hard time with that. I mean, I talk about this with my husband all the time because he's starting his own, digital agency. And he talks to people like on the phone, like trying to sell them, his services, and they just have a hard time with the idea of spending money to make money, like advertising and all that. Like they just don't want to let go of that money because it's like they just, they're so scared. They're so scared to spend money that could potentially make them more money. And it's like they'd rather just like sit in their corner and just wait, for them to like get more clients or whatever, instead of investing in their business. So it's just like one of those things where it's like, unless you kind of get into that, break through that glass ceiling, and like be the person who creates opportunities for others, be the person who, makes opportunities for yourself, make money for yourself. And obviously you kind of start like hiring people and like, in a way, like responsible for other people to make money, like people just don't see that. Like they don't see like where, where their time is going and what is it really worth, and like how they're spending their time and how much of their time is really wasted.
A couple of things. One, which is associated with how people don't see the value of spending their time doing productive things rather than trying to save money. Right. And one of them is because of the non-linearity thing, in the sense that they're always looking at, because they're stuck in this tick, 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 tick. They're like, oh, but it's the weekend. I wasn't working on that weekend. Therefore, it's fine that I go across town to try to find the truck and spend the next weekend also gathering my friends, and then spend the next weekend and then spreading the mulch. I wasn't doing anything that weekend. I wasn't getting paid. They don't understand what's the non-linearity aspect. The non-linearity aspect is, let's say you were spending that time training yourself, educating yourself, investing, let's say, in yourself in terms of skills. Okay. The non-linearity, the compounding will happen maybe 5 years later, right? 5 years later, because now you have this skill, this certification, so on and so forth, and boom, you'll be seeing those results. We all know how the success graph looks. It's not some linear thing. That's what I mean by the non-linearity. It's that it is a jagged, shall we say, thing, and then at some point, boom, it gets exponential. It gets exponential a lot of times because of the compounding effects of crap you did 5 years ago. Not crap you did in this hour. I want to see the results this hour. Okay, this hour is $15. Okay, another hour, $15. That's, you're gonna get stuck again in the underneath the glass ceiling. To understand that I'm going to pay that $500 for that guy to do the mulch so that I can continue to work on my skill. Maybe I'm learning programming. Maybe I am trying to study for a certification. Maybe I am trying to close another deal. Maybe I'm developing some kind of, I don't know, you were talking about charts for your business, that kind of a thing, right? Sure, I'll give away that money right now. Sure, I'm not seeing the direct result from the money, or in terms of money coming out from me doing this chart right now, but that's because I'm building something. And that thing will pay me, who knows, an unlimited amount, possibly, potentially in the future. So that's the one thing. The second thing is a practical point about this time thing, or two practical points. One thing is this, okay? We now have the ability to hire people outside the United States with Upwork or all those other places, things like that, where you can get freelance, right? So basically, even if you are in a 9 to 5, and people don't tend not to do this, I don't know why they don't do it. You know that, hey, if you want to be more productive in your work, and your spreadsheeting, let's say, is not you're not best at the spreadsheet aspect of your work, you can find some kid in Brazil to pay $5 an hour to do the spreadsheet part of your work. Your work, especially these days when we work remotely, right? So you can be working for Procter and Gamble, whatever it may be, and you're expected to do. You have a quota. This is especially apropos for people that are in sales. You're in sales, so you're expected to kill this amount of whatever, and then you get a portion of what you kill, right? Why not pay somebody to do prospecting for you, right? Be like, hey, go through these websites and use these filters to find out these particular people for me, because I'm trying to go through the filters that are the ones that prospecting have already been done on this. I work on the bottom part of the funnel. I got to make phone calls. Okay. So I pay this kid somewhere $2, $5, $6 an hour to do prospecting for me. It's actually something I do. This is
that's something I already do too. That's something I do too.
There you go. So it's like people need to understand these practical things. And then the number two practical thing, and then we'll continue on the video because we'll wrap up soon. I don't think we'll be able to go through the entirety of the video, but I think that the points that we've made so far are actually quite good. The other point is this. We're saying don't value your time in terms of money. Don't denominate your time in terms of money. But also, let's be real. there's a motivational aspect that is important here. What I'm going to say is this: put a crazy dollar value on your time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you must think, oh, well, the hourly, put $5,000 per hour on your time. What this does for you, because you have to be in conjunction with the other things, with the
Mm-hmm.
nonlinearity, most especially, is you are going to be working towards a position where you're going to have a
Mm-hmm.
system that includes paying this guy for, shall we say, prospecting, paying that guy to do this, paying blah, 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 such that when you come in and actually spend an hour, you're generating $5,000 worth of value because of
Mm-hmm.
the system you've built.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you're like, oh, I want to set myself up at $5,000 an hour or $50,000 an hour, whatever it may be, okay, I set mine at $5,000 an hour for now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to constantly, always, when I put time into something, it's about the systems that I'm trying to build, the
Mm-hmm.
competitive advantage that I'm trying to set up. One of my huge competitive advantages, for example, in the engineering industry, is that my employees are international. I hire engineers, or my staff right now based in Ethiopia and also Europe, where
Mm-hmm.
a certain part of Europe, Budapest, right, where
Mm-hmm.
the dollar goes far. This is a competitive
Mm-hmm.
advantage against my competitors. I've been working in order to get there, a system in order to get there, so that when I sit down and check their work, put my stamp on it, and send it over, that 1 hour, boom, worth a whole lot of money. Okay, the
Yeah.
client gives me $5,000, let's say. I turn around and I give them $200. That's the idea. So let me just reiterate, and then you can, shall we say anything you want to say, and then we'll continue the last part of the video. But the reiteration is, number one, you can hire people internationally. The technology is there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can actually go out there, and even if you're doing a 9 to 5, the things that you're not so good at in that 9 to 5, you can outsource it. Don't it's not your employer's responsibility. Go ahead, outsource it. Outsource it. A couple of cups of coffee, you can outsource that hard part, and then you can bring in more value because it's about the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, anyways, there's no point in reiterating. I think we get the point. We
Mm-hmm.
get the point. Charge, put a big dollar value if you must on it in terms of time. Put a big dollar value on it. Something that is scary, something that seems ridiculous, and then try to work a system, create a system that'll then bring that money in. Any thoughts before we continue?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the hiring internationally. I mean, we do it for the band too. And in the beginning, we were doing it ourselves, like looking for all the wedding planners in town. But then it got to the point where it's just like, oh my God, this is just wasting our time. So we found, Upwork, and we do have a virtual assistant in India. Like, that money goes far for her, so she's willing to do the mundane tasks we don't want to do. And saves us time, so we can focus on important things that actually make us money.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Let's play a little bit more of this, and then we'll come back. We'll land the plane. We'll reiterate the points, ladies and gentlemen. Fair use.
But if you really look at any of these examples of successful people valuing their time, what you will notice is that they aren't really valuing their time specifically. What they're valuing is their energy, and where they are focusing that energy to achieve the best results. If we adopted this mentality, a scientist would do what the businessman does. He would hire somebody to clean his house for him. Why? Because let's look at this, you guys. If we've got a brilliant scientist, is the highest and best use of the energy of that particular scientist with his talent, his skills, and his knowledge to clean a house, or to pour that energy towards science? The universe is interested in the highest and best use of a thing. And if we want to be in alignment with success, and part of that is excellence, which is really just another word we use to describe expansion, we need to adopt the same mentality. If you felt yourself, which I know you did, go into resistance about the previous two examples I just gave, the reason is this: you do not want to accept that someone's innate talent and purpose could possibly be cleaning houses. First, this reaction comes from the societal judgment which you have adopted, that somebody who is a house cleaner is of lower social value than somebody who is, say, a scientist or a businessman. Second, you're making the assumption albeit a wrong one, that no one's interest, aptitude, passion, and talent is cleaning. Third, in this random hypothetical situation, which doesn't really exist, but let's pretend it does, where no one on earth really wants their purpose to be a specific thing, so no one wants to clean houses, you're also not saying that if we actually accepted that as a reality, humanity itself would come up with different options to get the job done. For example, the robotics industry would have already overhauled our world like it will very soon. Dovetailing off of this concept, many people have remarked in the modern day how truly amazing it is, just the level of quality that used to exist versus does exist. I mean, all you have to do is look at modern buildings versus the buildings that the people built in the ancient times to be pretty freaking embarrassed with where quality has gone. It baffles the mind that a society would focus on building something that took thousands of years to erect. One of the reasons was that these societies valued quality and results more than time. Essentially, the human lifespan was much shorter, so you'd think that they would value their time more, but actually they didn't. What they valued was contribution. What they valued was the sense that they could add and improve this world in some way. What they valued was to be able to leave their mark on a world that they would leave soon. They valued.
All right, all right, all right. All right, all right, all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that'll be the end of the sharing of the video aspect of this. Now, what are your thoughts about this quality talk, right? One, we talked about the outcome, the product, that it's not about the time. It's about the energy and the outcome, the output. Stop talking about how much you're worth per hour. It's insane. Your time is the only resource you have, 100%. Without time, you're not even here. What do you know? That's the only thing that really matters. But don't change it into some kind of economic bargaining chip, because it's not. The economic bargaining chips are products, results, outcomes. And then she mentioned the whole thing about quality. People spent thousands of years building the Great Wall of China. These days, we're like, why would you want to do that? It takes so much time. How about we just paper mache something together? How about we just use stucco to build this stuff and make it look like this? You know how these days we tend to build things to make it look like something else, but we don't actually.
Right.
It's not actual real stone and real marble. We didn't spend the time crafting that. Let's just kind of paper mache it together, and we'll just make it look that way. And I'm not really into, shall we say, oh, let's now get down on the modern world about that. It's just an artifact, shall we say, data point that represents this kind of change in mindset. But any closing thoughts about the last thing she said, and then we can kind of go back and forth and finish this off.
Definitely agree with, leaving a mark, producing quality. I think people have lost touch with that, what it means to make something of quality, give value, contribute to society. People are just so caught up in this, my time is worth this much, but are you really providing value? Are you really contributing? Are you really doing something for your community, the world, and I think people don't understand, I don't want to say normal people, regular people that demand equality. We're all, be treated the same, paid the same, universal basic income, whereas it's is it really going to help? Is it really going to make you expand and, pursue excellence if everyone's just getting paid the same? I just have a problem with people always talking about everyone should just get paid the same. Everyone should get, a cap in their salary, once they're making this much. And I'm like, why? If this person is producing value and quality for whatever thing they do, why shouldn't they get paid more? Why should we just be all paid the same when everybody clearly functions at a different level, at different, attitude, energy? Everybody puts in different kinds of energy towards something that they, why should everyone be paid the same? I still I have a hard time whenever people say that. So I think at the end of the day, everyone should realize what value they can give. Everybody has some unique skill, some unique talent that they can use to make money, but also to contribute to the world. And I mean, what's the purpose of your life then if you're just, working for an hourly wage at some company that you don't really care about? Like what are you doing all this for? What are you spending your time on? I think everyone should pursue having, leaving a mark, and just knowing that you did something good for mankind.
Indeed, leaving a mark, knowing that you did something good for your mind, for mankind, knowing that also that you pushed yourself towards the extreme, towards the edges of your ability and your capacity, and you're going to fall flat on your face a couple of times, and you may not necessarily even achieve what you thought you might, but it's a whole lot more fulfilling to at least try, right? And we know that not everybody is going to get to a certain point,
Right.
but everyone can adopt the mentality though, because as I said, you can be an employee and still go on the Upwork thing and get somebody to do some things for you, because it's not just the best use of your time. You take a little bit of your salary, and I'm like, I don't do Excel spreadsheets. I outsource my Excel spreadsheets. I get $10 an hour to work. I take $2 out of that and I give it to someone in Brazil to do spreadsheets, because it's just going to be, I'm going to be more productive, I'm going to be more happy, so whatever it may be. And maybe I'm also trying to start up some kind of side business. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and let me try to, shall we say, encapsulate and wrap up what we've looked at today. Time is a very valuable thing. It's the only thing that you really have when you think about it, because without it, nothing else is going on. However, when it comes to economic production, it is the product of your time that matters. Okay, whether it takes 1 second or 100 years to make it, doesn't really matter. It's about the quality, the product, what you bring out, the output. That really is what matters. Okay, so it's a question of time versus results. Stop thinking about time and think in terms of results. And then people are different. People's energy is different. People's capacities are different. Okay, I use the LeBron James example, or I use, let's say, the Kenyans. Okay, the Filipinos could try for 10,000 years to try to beat the Kenyans in terms of winning the marathons. It's not going to happen. Okay, it's not going to happen, right, Joan? Like
No.
you can keep on. They're just different. Those people are built different.
Yep,
They're different. So we need to accept that. We tend to be able to accept it in the physical realm, like in the realm of your muscles and your way you're built. But when it comes to other aspects, we cringe. But guess what? It's actually more in other aspects. In other words, the way people differ physically is one thing, but the way they differ mentally, energetically, or spiritually, if you want to put it, it's even more than that.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's even, people are even way more different, So what's another point that we can make here? The point is, pay people to do the things that are not worth your energy. Okay, if your energy is better spent, developing this particular characteristic you have, practicing the piano, doing whatever, developing that business, stop spending hours trying to save $5, clipping coupons, driving from city to city, running from pillar to post, trying to save money on some stuff, on some kind of house cleaning chore or whatever the hell it may be. Get to the position where you can very quickly outsource that, so that not you, so that you can just sit on your ass. No, because again, you're trying to break out, right? So that you can then do some things. What are some practical examples we can do? Now, go into something that is more performance based. If you're not going to be a full-time entrepreneur, pick up a sales gig. And by that, I mean, try to sell something for somebody where it's performance based. That way, it's not about your time. That way, you can create a system that produces the results being sales, right? That you can then cash in on. Find the competitive advantage of things. It's not just about the time thing always, okay? So know and recognize and regulate your energy is the last thing I would say about this. In other words, stop thinking in terms of, I got 24 hours today. Not every 24 hours is equal, which is just a different way of talking about the time, about how people are different. You too are different on different days, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure you know this, Joe, right? There's some days when you're like, boom, 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 boom. And then the next day you're like, you can barely even move the cup of coffee, right? So understand the whoop and wharf, the, shall we say, cadences and rhythm of your energy. Okay, that's how you should be operating, not in terms of time, because when you can understand this, understand your state, your perceptual state, the state of your subjective consciousness. How much energy do I have today? How much focus do I have today? And then you can kind of maneuver that. Now I'm getting a little bit more nuanced in terms of productivity, but the point is, it's not about time. It is about productivity and the outcomes, ladies and gentlemen. So we are done. Okay, this has been another great episode of the review with Ike and Joan. We're back. We're going to be doing this weekly. We're going to make sure that our cadence is solid going forward. And yeah, Joan, you want to promote your channel or anything else that you're doing lately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. Just look me up, Joan Quinto, Joan, JoanQuinto. It's all about minimalism and lifestyle and self-development. So check it out. And if you're interested in my business, it's called Boogie Agenda. So very easy, Boogie Agenda. You can check out our videos on YouTube as well. And we have our website, boogieagenda.com. Check it out if you ever need entertainment services. And we'll travel. Oh, yeah.
All right. And we are gone, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.